Well, hello, friends. Welcome to From Busy to Rich, the podcast designed to inspire advisors to increase their profitability, quality of life for themselves and those they serve. With me, as always, Wes Young, and today we're going to be continuing our talk on the dance of peak performance teams by talking about the importance and how you actually get a team on the same sheet of music. So, Wes, why don't you give us a quick recap of kind of what we talked about last time and then lead into where we're going today?
Yeah, well, nothing can be done without having the right people on the bus and the right people in the right seats and moving in the quality direction. And we talked about last week primarily how do you hire the right dance partners for this? And so there's the big areas we went over. There's like kind of 6 things: is the difference between employees and team members, and emphasizing the need for responsibility-driven team members rather than just task-oriented employees. The difference, the second, the importance of hiring doers over thinkers, not smart people. Everybody's smart, doers and thinkers, but there's a whole dialogue we have around that, focusing on action-oriented people who can execute the tasks efficiently. And then 3, interview techniques, such as asking candidates about their specific accomplishments and things they don't want to repeat again as well, because you get some interesting feedback on the makeup of people that way. 4 was the use of various assessment tools, the Triple T tool, which we made available in the show notes, to evaluate roles and responsibilities, using assessments like the Colby to understand natural working styles. And then the Working Genius, which has become one of our favorites, Justin, for just internally and then in evaluating new people coming onto our dance team here. The Working Genius framework to identify individual strengths and preferences. And then 5, the importance of aligning team members' skills and preferences with their roles to create a more effective and satisfied team. And the last one, 6, the need for clear communication, delegation, deadline setting to manage different working styles effectively. So that was all last week, our kind of deep discussion of that. So go back and listen to that first one, and then you can listen to this one.
Building on that, what are the components when we're talking about? I mentioned getting people on the same sheet of music, but what are those components and where do you start? Yeah,
so you can have the most talented people in the world, and if they're all doing a different dance at different times, at different rhythms, it's going to look funny. It just is. And the experience is not going to be peak performance. It's going to be a mess. We've also used the analogy sometimes of like a band playing music. And I don't care how good the individual performer is at their instrument or their vocal, if they're singing a different song and songs at different speeds, and they're singing different genres of music at the same time, it's going to sound like noise. And it's kind of like you hear an orchestra warm up. It's noisy, right? It's like everybody's doing their own thing, all over the place. And then the conductor gets up there and brings them all together and aligns that great group of musicians to play beautiful music. Or you can align great dance partners and orchestrate it in such a way it looks really cool and the experience is awesome. So some of the things that we do regularly that I think fall into this that gets so overlooked, or it's not just talked about regularly enough, is you've got to define your what and your why to start with. So what is your win organizationally? And Justin, as you know, every single Thursday, somebody on our team, because Cheryl asks them every single team meeting, hey, what is our win and why does it matter? And then, so it sounds like this: our win, and this is like it's so difficult for people to try and consolidate this because they're like, but a lot of things can be a win. You can't have 20 wins. So our win at the highest level of the organization is we inspire people to increase their profitability and their quality of life. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff we can do to accomplish that, but at its peak, at its core, that is what we're here to do. And then why does that matter? And here's kind of the back end of that for us. If we're not out there helping people increase their profitability and quality of life, what goes unseized or unsolved? And basically all of us have far more things to do than there is time. In our effort to get the most out of life, it's really easy to live a marginless life. So you're just doing a bunch of stuff. You're running. And quite often, what we do, we lean into pursuing things. Our default mode forward is we lean into pursuing things that scream the loudest, not necessarily the things that actually matter most to our win. And so the lens that we look at every activity, every process that we have starts there. It starts with, hey, that's really cool and it's a good idea, but it's not the best idea for our win. That's a good strategy, a good tactic, but does it mesh well with the rhythm of our organization because of what we want to accomplish? And so what we've distilled down at this point in our organization, and this evolves because your win, your what, it's like marry that, but date all your processes and procedures to getting there. And we have over time, we've iterated it, but what we do, big picture, is we stop people. We stop people long enough and get them excited enough to want to lean into a conversation about where are you right now financially? And that's quantitative stuff and qualitative stuff. And what future do you want to move towards? What does a rich life actually look like to you? Not just 30 years from today. What does it look like over the next 3 years? Because once we understand where you are and what matters to you, the future that you'd like to live out, then we can have great conversations around the areas of planning that would be most relevant out of the hundreds of thousands of combinations of strategies and ideas out there to actually move you closer to that ideal future that you want to create from where you're starting at. So keeping those things at the forefront kind of helps us understand what dance are we all trying to do together. And then we can easily filter backward to say, all right, then how do we best get there? And then I would add another component to that is what rhythm do we want to do that as? So once you defined all those things and you've kind of outlined your process, and again, for those of you interested, we teach the Transform Learning Series twice a year and record all the sessions, 11 session class where you get the behind the curtain view of exactly what it is we do and why we do it and the techniques and strategies we're using. And then you're going to get the annual rhythm we operate off of. Because most people, and I'd love your thoughts on this, you've been an advisor in a lot of different capacities, Justin, as have I over time. But isn't it true that most advisors we observe that are kind of frustrated with the way life is going, their year every day looks like Groundhog's Day, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely can. Yeah, there's never a change in pace or rhythm. You're doing the same thing to a matter degree. It's whatever servicing is required at this point and this time of the year for whoever it comes up. And then also you're constantly looking for, especially if you're not a financial planning charging fees, you're typically looking for like, where are your next opportunities and constantly looking for new potential clients and running that down. And that's year round.
That's right. Yeah. And so there is no break. There is no off season. Every professional athletics team has an off season, and you still do stuff in the off season to prepare yourself for the games you're going to play or the dance you're going to dance in this case, but you practice, right? You have things in between. And for most people, it's just not a part of the rhythm of the organization. So one of the things we did that's dramatically impacted not only the results that we produce, but also the enjoyment of those, the process of playing the game, is we have seasons. We have mid-year strategy sessions, and those happen between mid-March and mid-July, where it is our deeper dive for those clients that have been with us for at least a year or more, where we stop them and we say, okay, let's measure progress. You were here last year. Visually, here's where you are now. We have a tool we use to do that. Here's all the things we've been working on your strategy summary that's been accomplished, that you've been getting every month, by the way, because that's part of the dance as well. And here are the things that are outstanding that we probably want to lean into, or the unique opportunities that didn't exist last year that now do. And so it's great that we've got this rhythm to do that. And then we don't do those the rest of the year. We don't. I mean, we're always onboarding new clients because you never know when a new client's going to come into the dance. But for those that have already been around the wheel once, we want to get them into that annual rhythm as quickly as possible. And we set that expectation for them at the beginning of the client relationship. Second time that we have client-facing meetings is going to be year end. And that's usually the last quarter of the year. And for the most part, that's going to be a session that we do projections of, hey, here's where you were income-wise for last year and income tax-wise for last year. And we use Holistic Plan to frame it up. Here's where you are looking like you're going to land this year? And in light of that, did you implement all the stuff we talked about? Because again, unapplied truth is like unapplied paint. Doesn't do anybody any good. So we want to make sure, did you do these things? And every year when we do these, clients are like, oh yeah, I was supposed to do that. And we're like, yeah, and it's going to save you $10,000 if you do, or whatever it is. And so sometimes adding quantification with that task all of a sudden makes it scream louder in their life. And so we get them to take action on stuff we've already agreed. But then for you and I and Cody on our team, we sit around and we think through for every client, what other things, again, some things that are just on our narratives checklist, which is something we give to all our folks in Transform. And then some things that are new on there that weren't an opportunity last year. Maybe it's a tax credit that exists. Maybe it's something that is a change to the tax law, or maybe the client situation's just moved enough to where some tools that actions we would take, while last year it wasn't that applicable, this year it is massive. And so it's super helpful, but then it gives you a break from all that, right? And then you get back into like working on different things that you just in those focus times are not going to have the same amount of time. So highly recommend the approach here is you define your what, your why, then that's going to help inform your how, and everybody's going to agree upon that. Then you got to have some kind of annual calendar that helps you understand when you're leaning into certain activities and when you're not. Just don't make it Groundhog Day every day, because you're going to burn yourself and your people out, your teammates out. And then I'd say just the last piece, which really does happen most of the time in the in-between times, is question it, iterate on it. Is there something else we could do to where this whole thing would feel better, where the dance would look smoother? Some new technology, some existing technology we're just not applying well. And so you're always putting yourself in environments, you and I are in Strategic Coach and Cody. And it's amazing to me how, as buttoned up as I think we are, when I go, I come out with new ideas, new key initiatives every time that I think are going to really help us enhance our ability to do our what and enhance all those things every single quarter. So it's a constant improvement in there as well. That needs to be a part of the dance of a peak performing team. Because otherwise you continue to dance the same dance over and over again, and you just become beautifully prepared for a world that no longer exists or just isn't as fun or efficient. So any thoughts on any of that as we wrap up on this one?
Yeah, just a couple of things there. One, I think like creating that rhythm does a number of things. Like you said, it creates excitement and breaks from different things. It also like is a high or larger grouped version of the idea or concept of flow state that people talk about, where you're grouping activities in your day instead of having to change, because there's always a process to get into the framework and the mindset of whatever you're doing, and then to transition to a completely different style or type of task. So we're doing year-end tax planning for everybody, right? Like we're in that mindset. So it's easy to have the conversations. You're just changing who it is that you're focusing on, their specific situation, versus having to do a mid-year here and then a year-end here, or just completely bouncing back and forth in different types of meetings that you're prepping for. It's so much more difficult. It also like creates the bandwidth and the capability to really focus on the business, where you were talking about that. So just in it, like when you're doing it the other way, you're normally just every day you're in the business. You're never focusing on iterations and like the bigger term vision. And that's where I've seen people just get burnt out, right? Because you lose sight of going back to the what and why, like where are we going? Because yes, what's a big picture win? And then create a rhythm or an ideal timeline of getting there, 3, 5, 10 years. What's that look like? So that you've got a process of doing it. But if it's not built in down to, those seasonal aspects, you're never circling back. You're never reevaluating, continue to develop. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. One thing I would add into that, because we did a whole podcast series on it that I think is just game changer. And I think it's valuable. That'll enhance your dance, enhance your annual rhythm, is the use of video for preparation. Because if you are doing what we do and you're squeezing a lot of these mid-years into one section of time, and you have the amount of clients we have, you prepare for a meeting on Thursday. Let's say we have one of our paraplanners, or if you don't have one, you are it, right? and they do some work, and then you have a project manager that then they prepare the lead advisor to have a great meeting. And you've prepared on Thursday of the week before. Monday, you're in that meeting with the lead advisor, and you had to do it all over again. You have to let me get my head around this again, and I hate that. Let me renew my mind to what we already thought through. And the best person in the world to do that on Monday is the person that had their head around it on Thursday. And the best way to do that, just record a short 5-minute video saying, here is all the things we're going to talk about for this particular client. And here's the things we're going to show. Here's what we're going to use. And we have whole checklists that help people do this with examples that we give to our folks that are in Transform, that take the guesswork out of this. It tells you exactly what to do and how to do it. And now you can add your own flair if you'd like. But the other thing is, like, the weight of the week, when I have 12 meetings in a week, used to be heavy on Monday, and it'd be like out of gas by Friday. Now the weight of the week's not that bad because I watch these videos, and in a very short period of time, my head's around where all these things, what we're going to talk about with this client. And then right before the meeting, like, I got several meetings right after this podcast that I'm going to have that are year ends. And I'm just going to go watch the 5-minute video in the client file and say, oh yeah, I know exactly what we're talking about. And I'm right back in that meeting. So it's not a lot of, oh gosh, let me get my head around it again. It's, let me renew my mind when a head was already around this thing. And then if that client reschedules or that client moves, you're not going, oh, I got to go through this whole cycle again. So do things that are going to make it easy on your future self, and using videos to prepare. Even if you're a solo advisor, I would, if I could go back and tell my 20-year younger version of myself, this is really good, you should do it. It would be that. Like, record your preparation for these meetings. And if you're not preparing for meetings, that's something to pay attention to as well. If you're like, well, I'm more of a, freestyler. I just like to get out there and, here's the thing. I get it. And some of you are so good just off the cuff. You can do that. And you're probably naturally better than a lot of people that even prepare. But don't compare yourself to other people in that regard. How good could you be? Because if you gave forethought and you actually recorded yourself when your head was in it, and you just renewed your mind, you're light years ahead when you're having that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. You're just freeing up so much space that you're normally carrying those things in your mind. And I remember, for me as an advisor, especially before we started doing this, one of the number one things that would keep you up as an advisor at night is the potential that you were forgetting about something.
Yeah.
You dropped the ball on something.
Yeah.
So having something that makes it to where you're not going to because it was captured, or anybody that's ever written a research paper and had to stop in the middle of it and then come back to it. Like, it took you how long to get back into, like, what was I thinking when I was writing that? Like, where was I going with that? Like, just like, get past all that, quick video summary, jump right back into where you were, and then you're picking up in it. And I really think the biggest thing there is you get to focus more on creative energy versus just like remembering energy, like basic stuff to just get back there.
Yeah, I love that. And, that actually, the idea when we began to do it came to me because I do quite a few talks every year at different, financial planning organizations and companies. And quite often I know the talk was going to be good because I had the title of it and I'd given it before, and I'm like, this would be perfect here. But then I'd have to cobble together, okay, what is it that I'm going to talk about, until I had recordings of that talk. Then I just listened to myself when my head was around it, and I gave the talk to get my head up to speed, and then I could iterate on that talk and get it better. So it follows the same pattern. You can use this in so many different ways to make the administrative burden go away. We're even using it for like complex areas of strategy. Maybe it's incentive stock option plan that we've helped a client implement, or maybe it's a complicated estate plan that normally there's a lot of pieces. So it takes a while to get your head around it. But when your head's around it, record yourself going through the flow of what you would be talking about with the client, because you're going to have to do it anyway. So why not do it once and then renew your mind instead of get your head back around it?
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you all listening. We hope this was encouraging for you. We'll be continuing the conversation next week. You'll join us. We'll kind of round out this series on part 3 of this dance and peak performance and some of the things that we were talking about. We hope that you'll take some of this and really start creating those rhythms, down to the day, over the week, and then over your year and then forward looking at where you want to go with your business and your practice, and be able to implement that and create that rhythm so that you too are just navigating things in a way that's lighter, doing all the same things you were doing before, but with a different atmosphere and feel to it. So hopefully it's encouraging to you. I encourage you to come back, go check out the website. Thank you again.